I welcome you to another video on Mastering English in 2025. This video is about storytelling. One of the best ways of learning a language is by telling stories. You listen to a story and you repeat it, or you tell a story which you've heard in your own language into English. You create your own incidents, the incidents in your life, into the form of a story, and then you tell that. There are many ways in which you can tell a story. Today, I will tell you what are the important points you need to remember in order to practice storytelling, which will greatly improve your English. Therefore, I request you to watch the video completely, to share it, to like and comment, and subscribe if you haven't to this channel, Sumita Roy's English Classroom, where I, Professor Sumita Roy, am giving you some ideas about how to learn English language and, of course, sometimes English literature too. Let us now begin to talk about storytelling. I'm sure all of you know that right from childhood, all of us love to listen to stories. The earliest memories of a child are the memories of hearing their parents, grandparents telling them stories. I also have wonderful memories of this, where we would hear many stories. So, how would you practice your English when you want to use storytelling as the method? You can watch videos on storytelling and you can do what is called as shadow practice. And that is, you repeat the story as you've heard it. I have given you a storytelling video where there is a story which you can all listen to and then you can repeat. That is one way of doing it. Of course, you have to keep in mind many points which you need to have when you want to use storytelling for learning the language. One is that you must remember to whom you are telling the story and keep the language suitable to these people. Therefore, your language competence is very important. Unless you know the correct language for the correct audience, your storytelling will not become, it will not be appreciated. So, you need to learn various levels of English. Start with a basic level of language and take simple stories. You have a very famous folk story where a little boy does not want to go to school because he has to go through the forest and he finds it very frightening. Now, you notice I'm using simple sentences, simple words. The mother tells the child that whenever you go into the forest, you call your elder brother. And the elder brother's name is Madhusudan, which is, of course, the name of Lord Krishna. So the mother does not want to tell the boy about religion, about worship, or about gods. She says, you have an elder brother in the forest. You call him and you go. Then every day the boy happily goes to school because as soon as he enters the forest, Madhusudan, the elder brother, comes and holds his hand and takes him across the forest. Now, you see, what you're doing is you are relating this to young children who might hesitate to come to school. So, you see how the mother is. The mother tells the son a very creative idea, and that becomes a story which motivates children. Now, suppose you want to tell this story to people who are older. You want to use this story in a philosophic discussion. You are giving a speech where you are talking about philosophy, and then you're talking about psychology, you're talking about emotional intelligence. You can use the same story, and this same story has to be used at that higher level where you use the ideas of the story to illustrate what you are saying. You talk about philosophy, you say that in philosophy, the concept of faith is very important. Faith is sometimes non rational. I'm not saying irrational. Look at the vocabulary, which is so important. Irrational means it is beyond reason, it cannot be reasoned out. It is non rational, it's extra rational. It is beyond reason. We cannot justify faith or we cannot condemn faith by saying faith does not exist. It depends on each person. So you take the same story of the brother Madhusudan to that level. The audience who might be experts in philosophy will add to the discussion. They will talk about the dimension of faith and the faith of the small child, how the faith is fostered by the mother. The story is very long where the teacher does not have faith. So the teacher says, I want to see your Madhusudan, elder brother Madhusudan. And when he comes, he cannot see anything because eyes of faith, we call it insight. INSIGHT. Sight is eyes visible, what we see with our physical eyes. Insight is what we see from within. So you can use it. Now, if you're talking about psychology, you can talk about the mind, how the mind is affected by words, and in what way the mind governs our actions. The child did not want to go to school. Now the child is willing to go to school. So you see, you are talking about the same story. The storytelling is the same. This is the point you have to remember. Emotions. Why does the mother say you have an elder brother? Because this little boy would want to look up to somebody. So, elder brother. We have beautiful stories written by Chaucer in, an English which is much older than our English. And those are called Canterbury Tales. We have beautiful stories Buddha used to tell, and these are the Jataka tales. We have stories of Panchatantra, very beautiful stories. We have Greek mythology, very beautiful stories. So if you come across any of these stories and you start using them, then your English becomes better. So the first point which I told you is that the language which you use for your storytelling and the ideas which you are going to use for the same story have to be perfected. The story might be the same, but a different language, a different emphasis will change the same story much further. The second point is you must tell the story which the audience can sympathize with, the audience can understand. Suppose you tell the story of, a very religious scripture, Bhagavad Gita. You don't tell it as Bhagavad Gita, you tell it as a story. Then what are you doing? You are interacting with those people who might be able to use this as a story for their benefit. And that benefit comes to them only when they are talking about the story of a young man who's a warrior, but who goes to the field and says, no, I don't want to fight because these are all my cousins, my relatives, my teacher. How can I fight? Then the friend, Krishna is also a friend of Arjuna. the friend who's driving his chariot, who's the driver, who says, no, no, you cannot choose. It is your duty to fight. So they have a long conversation about why he should fight and what is the use of this war, which is the victory of good over evil. So you can frame a story. In this way, we can take incidents and frame a story. You are walking on the way, you're going somewhere. You find two people talking about something. They're talking about maybe the rise in prices of all commodities. You come home and you make a story out of it by saying, what discussion is happening at home? The wife says, go and buy something. The husband says, it's very expensive. Then the wife says, I need it, I have to do something with it. So the husband goes to the shop. He bargains with the shopkeeper. He talks to the shopkeeper, chooses what he wants after going to 10 shops. So all of them he's talking to. How did it start? It started with a single point. And that single point was you heard two people discussing that everything is becoming expensive. They're discussing price rise. So what did you do? You made a story out of it. You used your English, your language which you have developed. All the videos of language which are there will help you to improve your language. This will be a foundation for you. Once you have the foundation, you can start by telling stories. I will give you some examples of storytelling and you can choose from them. These examples should relate to what you are facing today. Somebody gave a comment, I remember in a recent video, saying that I am Ekalavya. Now, Ekalavya is a famous character whose story is very well known to anybody who knows the Mahabharata. So, what do? We take that one comment. If you are reading the comments, if you're reading the description, you will find that one comment by saying, I'm Ekalavya. That's wonderful. So, you think back on the story. Those of you who are saying that you cannot practice alone, those of you who are saying that you want to talk to me or you want a one-to-one class, you can see how important this story is for all of you. Ekalavya, who's a very poor boy, who's a boy who's not of the warrior profession, wants to learn archery. Archery is to use the bow and the arrow. The bow is like this, it's like a shaped like a D, and the arrow is a long stick with a pointed edge. In olden days, this was used as a weapon. In those days, there were no guns, there were no revolvers, so the bow and arrow was used. So that was called archery, Archery. Ekalavya wanted to learn archery because he realized that he was very good at it. He wanted to become better. So he went to the teacher of the princes of that country. The princes were all being taught archery because the job of the prince or the job of the king is to protect the people and keep them safe. And this, if somebody attacks you, you have to fight a war. You have to be very brave. You have to learn all the skills of warfare. So, archery. But this young boy, Ekalavya, was not of that class. He belonged to a different class. And therefore, when he went to ask the teacher says, no, sorry, I cannot teach you because I can only teach people who belong to the warrior class, the people who have to fight wars. What will you, poor boy, do by learning this? Don't learn. So you have discouraging teachers. My job is to motivate all of you who are saying we cannot learn. And then instead of discouraging, I'm telling you, you can learn. But I'm also telling you that I can only teach you through the online YouTube mode. I can't teach you one to one. I can't talk to you individually. I talk to you every day on a video. So Ekalavya goes back. Point number one. Now you have all of you sharing this story. That is called emotional connect. You have to have emotional connect in your story. Now Ekalavya has to practice on his own. He has no teacher, so he needs to practice on his own. Now, what does he do? He goes home and every day he practices archery again and again and again, which is what I keep telling all of you. Those of you who are saying we don't know a word of English, we cannot speak a single sentence of English, go on practicing. Watch the video, stop at every point and repeat what sentences I have used. If you do that, you will certainly learn English. It is not difficult at all. This is what you have to do, practice. Ekalavya did it. So all of you who are struggling, be like Ekalavya and learn. But the next part of the story is something which none of you will be able to share in, because the guru comes and says, you give me your thumb. Now that is called the climax of the story. The archery, you have to have the thumb in order to hold the bow and then leave the arrow. If your thumb is missing, you cannot be an archer. So the guru is very cruel. He doesn't want Ekalavya to become better than the princess. So he says, you have to give me your thumb. That means never again will you be able to practice archery. This Guru Dakshina, this, something which you give to the Guru, is something which all of you must remember. All you have to give is your comments, your likes, and your full watching of the video. No thumb, no money. Somebody asked me, should we pay money? I said, no, you don't need to pay. If somebody is asking you, that means it is a scam. So here, what did we see? We saw self-effort. So you are learning English using a story and learning English through self-effort. That is a very important point for you to remember. Now also a third story and a third point, and that is using your own intelligence. This again is a story which all of you might know, and the story is of Savitri. Savitri says that I will marry a poor man. She is the daughter of a very rich person, a king, but she wants to marry a poor man because that man's father also was a king. He has lost his kingdom, he has become blind, and they live in the forest. So this rich girl goes and starts living in the forest. But there is another problem also. They said that if you marry this person, he will die within 1 year. So marriage is for companionship. You want to be together for hundreds of years, or maybe for at least 50, 60 years. But Savitri has only 1 year. Therefore, she keeps serving her parents-in-law and her husband, and on the last day, she goes with the husband deep into the forest to see that he doesn't die. But then death cannot be stopped. The soul of the husband, Satyavan, is taken away. Now she has to bring it back. What does she do? She uses her intelligence and argues with the god of death. In all the arguments, she asks for the kingdom of her parents in law, she asks for the sight of her father in law, she asks for the life of Satyavan, which the god of death says, no, I cannot give. And then she says, I want to have hundreds of sons. Then, without realizing, the god of death says, okay. And for that, the husband's life is returned. Again, you can see the story is very important for you, because not only can you narrate this story, you can give it in greater detail, but you can also see how we have to use our intelligence. When you are learning English, the story will tell you all kinds of possibilities. And that is the next point which I want to mention. That is, if you have a story which is only half known to you, you can complete the other half. That is an excellent practice of learning English. You know, somebody tells you half a story, and then you find out the rest of the story. Or you imagine, use your imagination for the rest of the story. And then you find that you have learnt the language, you have generated your own ideas in your own language. So you are practicing language which is not copied from anybody. I'm not telling you copy what I'm saying. I'm telling you listen to what I'm saying and then give your own ideas in your own language. For this, the foundation of language is very important. Let me now give you one more story. Because this is a video on storytelling, I'm giving you many stories and I'm telling you what all you can learn from each of them. There is a father who's a salesman. He goes around selling things. He has two sons. He doesn't make much money by selling, but the sons make some demand on him by saying that we want this, we want money, we need money for ourselves. And the wife says that you must give the sons their money because you are the father and it is your duty to give them the money. So the salesman goes to the office and asks, can I get some money? Can I get a new pay package, some rise in my salary? The boss says, no, sorry. In fact, you have not been able to sell anything. So from today, we are removing you from the job. So not only does he not get money, he loses his job also. Now, at this point, I will end the story. And then I will leave it to you to complete the story. Now, what does the father do? How does the father get money to give to the children? How does the father keep his promise to the wife, to the mother, because he has promised that he will give the children money? You have to think. There are 10 different endings you might have. But this is a famous story by an American dramatist. It's a drama, actually. Death of a Salesman by Arthur Miller. I'm not telling you the full story. The title itself tells you what happens. And the title is Death of a Salesman. And the author is an American dramatist, a very famous American dramatist, Arthur Miller. Arthur Miller. Title, Death of a Salesman. So you can imagine how this half-completed story will practice your English, because now you have to complete the story using your own language. I have given you half the story and I have given you my own language. One thing is that you can listen to what I said and put the first half of the story in your own language. That is one way of doing it. And then complete it. The second is that you copy the first half from what I have said and add the second half yourself. So you can compare what I have used, the language I have used, the grammar and the pronunciation and the vocabulary I have used, and how you are using. The comparison is available to you. All these stories are important. There was a video where I mentioned the story The Elf and the Shoemaker. This was a video on learning words of different professions, vocabulary tips video, where you learned what do these people do. So I gave you a sentence saying that, have you read the story, The Elf and the Shoemaker? So some of you wanted to know the story. Now here is that story which also you can use. There was a poor shoemaker. He used to take the leather and he used to make shoes every day. But he was not able to make many shoes. Unless he made enough shoes and sold them, he would not have any money. He would starve, his family would starve. So he needed to make many shoes. If he got an order also for many shoes, he could not complete it. The whole night, if he kept awake also, he could not complete it. So he was very sad. And suddenly he found that every night when he closed his shop, he could leave the leather there and he would work on the next morning. When he opened the shop in the morning, he found that all the shoes were made. This happened many times. And then he was so surprised, he was so happy that one day he went and he saw that there were small fairies coming, supernatural things, not real. These are all imaginary. They are called elf, E-L-F, and plural is E-L-V-E-S. So they are coming, and because he's such a good person, they are helping by making shoes for him. So that is the story. Again, you can read this story online. I'm sure it is available. And you can also complete the story. Now you have some comparison and contrast stories also, which you can use. That is the last point which I'm going to make today. We have the story of Cinderella, where you have a stepmother who's very cruel. He makes this little girl do all the work, and the stepsisters also are very cruel. They are not friends of Cinderella. That is a story which many of you might have read. We also have the story of Sri Krishna, who was brought up by Yashoda, who was not his mother, not his biological mother. But see the contrast? She was so loving that she couldn't live 1 minute without him. Even when the little boy made a mischief, she could not scold him. Others would come and complain. She would not scold him. She would look after him to the best of the ability. There was a brother, Balaram, who used to love Krishna, the little boy, more than he loved himself. So you see contrast stories. There is one story where there are cruel stepmother and cruel stepsisters make the girl work. And there is another story where the foster mother and the brother are so helpful, so loving, and so genuinely a family. When you tell stories like this, you get a lot of practice in English. Your vocabulary becomes excellent. When you have so many varieties of stories, your vocabulary improves. You have different types of sentences, different structures of sentences. In grammar, I will do sentence structures soon. But you here in storytelling, you're already learning different structures of sentences. Long ones, short ones, simple ones, complicated ones. Then you are also learning varieties of expression, different pronunciation, changing your voice to tell the story. When somebody is talking, you use a different voice. When you are narrating, you use a different voice. And of course, as I told you, the first point, which audience are you talking to? Who are you telling the story to? So when you practice all these things, you will find that your English is becoming excellent. Every day, if you can think of a few stories, already known stories, I'm not asking you to read again. Already you might know many stories. If you see a movie or if you see a television program, Can you make that into a story and practice it in English using your own thoughts, your own ideas, your own sentences? That would be a wonderful way of mastering English. Storytelling will help you. Thank you and all the best.